Could we all please stand for our karakia? Tu taua mai e ronga, tu taua mai e raro, tu taua mai e roto, tu taua mai e waho. Kia tau ai, te mauri ora ki te katoa. Home e, hui e, tai ki e. Right, well, welcome everybody to this meeting, to the councillors and staff and visitors. Just to remind everybody that the meeting is being live streamed and is available as we speak on our council Facebook page and will be posted there afterwards and also on our website. So, are there any apologies, please?
Just to let you know that I will be leaving at 10:30 to go to another engagement.
Right, and I understand Councillor Tapine will be contacting us, joining us through Zoom. He's unable to be here. So, I'd like to move the apology. Oh, I'd like someone to move the apologies, please. Second, thank you, Councillor Mawson, Councillor Crystal. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
All those against say no. Thank you. Are there any conflicts of interest? Okay. There being no conflicts of interest, I'd like to move to the public forum, and just a little bit of introduction about the public forum for the public. Times available at the start of each open meeting for public forums or deputations where the public can present to council on matters of interest and concern. Anyone who wants to do this must contact the council at least a day before for permission, and we can't subsequently debate or discuss the issues raised at these forums at the meeting, but if needs be, the matters raised can be referred to a committee for further consideration. So I'd like to, it's great having two different organisations presenting today. I'd like to ask Dr. Susan Jacobs, please, and Greer Lean to please come and take a seat. Dr. Susan Jacobs has the New Zealand Order of Merit and was formerly the Dean of the Faculty of Education, Humanities and Health Science at EIT. Since retirement, Susan has worked as a volunteer at our Citizens Advice Bureau, and that's what she is going to be addressing us today about. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you. You know secret goodies. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Hanui te mihi ki a koutou I tēnei ata. No America aho, engari ke ahuriri e noho ana mo ngā tō toru tako ma rima. Ke te tuao aho, I roto I te pō whakawhiranaki o ahuriri mo ngā tō whā. Ko Susan Jacobs toko ingoa, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.
Kia ora.
I'll sit down here, that's okay. Let me just introduce to you Greer Lean, who's with me today. Greer is completing a practicum placement at the Citizens Advice Bureau, and she's completing the last year of her Bachelor of Social Work at EIT. I want to talk to you today about the key issues that the Citizens Advice Bureau's clients are experiencing, and also the concerns of the Citizens Advice Bureau, which Napier City Council has so generously and kindly supported to enable us to continue to offer our services. And so first, let me thank the Napier City Council for that support. So just as a quick review, because I know some of you have come to our AGMs, and I apologize for going over some information that you may be well aware of, but others of you might not be so aware. Citizens Advice Bureau provides free, confidential information and advice to people. Other than Napier City Council funding, we don't have any government funding, and we see ourselves as important to be independent. We have the benefit, all of the CABs around the country, of which there are 81, we have the benefit of an enormous, fabulous database developed by CAB and Z, which has over 300 links to key information that is all evidence-based and links to over 35,000 community organizations around the country. So our training provides us with some information and abilities to use that great database, and then we also have ongoing monthly training. And as part of that, too, we help people learn about and understand their rights and responsibilities and to advocate for themselves. So I apologized earlier to the secretary the governance advisor who handed out the material for giving you more things to read, but because I imagine your papers are like that. But I've given you an example of 3 situations that were clients that we saw or spoke to just last week. So, you know, these examples are everyday examples. And one of the examples is where a volunteer interviewer did a fabulous job helping someone learn how to access the CAB&Z website and to find this information for him or herself. And so people who are computer literate and have the technology can do that, which brings me to the second thing that I've asked to be given to you, and that is related to the last thing that CAB&Z and constituent citizens advice bureaus in the confidential and anonymous data that they collect. Situations are noted, and one of those over the last several years has been the lack or the reduction of printed material from government agencies and forms and such for things like the tenancy tribunal or what have you. And so we experienced many clients needing help accessing technology or filling out forms online or finding the information. So CAB&Z added 2 questions to our confidential interview form that we fill out online. Is the client experiencing digital exclusion, and what form does that take if they are? You know, they don't have the technology, or they have a phone but they have no data, they don't know how to use it, you know, all sorts of reasons. And when that information was analyzed over the year 2019, it was found that digital exclusion isn't just about the prejudice that we might have about older people not being computer savvy. It cut across every decade for different reasons. And so we thought Napier City Council might be interested in that information as well. The other bit of information that I've given you relates to a PricewaterhouseCoopers analysis that was done of the Wellington Citizens Advice Bureaus when the Wellington City Council decided that they would no longer financially support the Citizens Advice Bureaus. And those, I believe there are 3 in Wellington, and they were faced with the prospect of closing down. What PricewaterhouseCoopers found, and this is true for all CABs because we all operate in the same way in terms of the way in which volunteers are trained and the quality assurance mechanisms that we go through. And you'll see that they found that the service was really unsurpassed. So I won't browbeat you about that anymore. So I just wanted to give you a wee snapshot of our Napier clients, and they aren't entirely all Napier, but I'll talk about that very quickly shortly. But it's very pleasing, I think, to see that the cross-section of people who use the Citizens Advice Bureau in Ahuriri broadly represent the breakdown of ethnicities in our community, and they also reflect each decade of life, people using it. Obviously, fewer people under 24 and fewer people over 80 because there are fewer people over 80. And I think it's interesting, too, that it's not a surprise in a way that people in the 30 to 50 age range are bigger users, because they're experiencing all of the things in life that compound families in those age ranges in particular. Last year, we provided service in terms of the Citizens Advice Direct service, nearly 3,000 people. Most of the clients are from Napier and its various suburbs, but occasionally, when people ring the 0800 number, that call will go to the next CAB that has an open phone line. So occasionally we get calls from the Waikato or Tauranga, or seldom Auckland, but usually, interesting, it's often Waikato for one reason or another. But similarly, it's important to note that when a Napier client rings the 0800 number, they might be, service be provided by a CAB in another area. The Citizens Advice Bureau collates queries according to these categories, and legal and government and finance and benefits are the biggest concern that we field. I mean, we get lots of consumer-related queries, either for services or for goods, a fair number of questions about housing and land, and those other categories. But legal and government and finance and benefits are the biggest, and that wouldn't surprise you at all. We are seeing a continued requests for food parcels from people who are sounding quite desperate. And of course, it's no surprise to you as well that emergency housing is another great concern. It's also important to note that our calls are becoming, I suppose over the last year or so, more complex, taking more time. And often a client will present with a problem, and as you question that and try to understand that a bit more, a much more complex scenario spools out. And the effects of poverty, of course, are not abating. And indeed, you know, of course, COVID has exacerbated that. Over the last year, CAB and ZED analyzed these queries, and I've written the heading wrong. It's inquiries to CAB by all clients during 2020. But what the analysis demonstrated was that Māori were disproportionately represented in those deep, desperate needs. And you see that Māori represented 45% of the requests for food parcels or service from food banks. And I'll let you read that information. So Citizens Advice Bureau in ZED is working with a wide range of agencies to pressure government to do more, and particularly to raise benefit levels. But I just wanted to share that information with you. I'm sure as city councilors, you understand the issues well. But it's also good to know that other agencies are working as well. We also help, we can contact government departments and, for example, MSD, et cetera. We have, we have some phone lines that we can call that are not for the general public when a problem is really intractable. Sometimes people just need help writing a letter, might be explaining why their boss thinks they need to be disciplined, or it might even be just a letter of resignation from their employment. And often people need some help filling out forms. Sometimes a form has really tiny writing and lots of little boxes, and sometimes they can be quite intimidating. So we provide that kind of service as well. We also have a JP available 2 days a week, Monday through Friday, and a legal clinic on Saturday. And it's terrific that those individuals volunteer to be there to help people. And the JP's assisted over 1,000 people last year, and the legal clinic, over 200 people came just to get pointed in the right direction. I mean, they have about 10 minutes with the lawyer, but it's a really valuable service for Napier citizens. And just briefly about the COVID lockdown, CAB and ZED mobilized to ensure that services were still going to be available to clients even though the centers were closed. And so volunteers were asked if they could provide the service from home. You know, did they have a quiet and confidential place from which they could work? And several of us did. We had a little room where we could close the door and no one could hear. And so Napier volunteers worked generally 1 or 2 days a week during COVID, and the calls were routed to our manager working from home, and or the emails were routed, and then the volunteers were given that information to respond to. And then towards the end of lockdown, we also assisted with NEMA and MSD checking on folks 70 and over, and I think I made about 125 calls, and it was really just marvelous to have no one say that they were having difficulty. Almost everybody to 100% said, no, I'm fine, my neighbors are looking after me, no, my son comes, and you know, it was a real sense of community that was manifest in that. So, here's the big deal. Our current challenge is that the great facility that we're in now, the owner wants to redevelop it, and we must move out next month. And we're greatly looking forward to being part of the library when it's open, but you would know better than I would when that might be, but I think it's maybe 4 or 5 years from now. But our current location, and even our past location, just over on Vautier Street, but being in the CBD is really critical. But of course it's expensive, and we've been enormously grateful for Napier City Council's financial support in general, and then with the move to Hastings Street, the top-up that helped us manage the rent, as it were. Even with that support, our manager must fundraise through applications to charitable trusts, and our volunteers also engage in fundraising activities, and that covers a little more than 1/3 of our expenses. So we could not exist without Napier City Council's support. So we're really grateful that the City Council has supported Napier residents through the Citizens Advice Bureau services, and so we're hopeful that that will continue. I think that the application is open for funding shortly, so this is a timely time to chat with you all. So thank you very much. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
Thank you very much, Susan. That was really helpful, and we all know we have a Citizens Advice Bureau, but it's really good to be reminded of the very valuable work that you do. And thank you for coming in and explaining your current situation with us, and hopefully a resolution will be found. So I'm wondering if any other councillors have got any questions or comments while Susan is here.
So have you got somewhere that you're looking to move to? What's happening?
A couple of staff, a volunteer and a staff member have been systematically and exhaustively looking. I don't know definitively, because I imagine that our board hasn't finally approved that, but it looks like there may be a place in the CBD. That's really all I know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just a question about the funding that the Napier City Council provides, Susan. Is that through the community services grants, or I think we have provided, perhaps I could ask the staff if they have some information about that, Ms. Carswell, Ms. Neki?
It's through the chair, it's through the service agreements, 3 years, and that's what you're referring to, Susan.
Yeah, thank you.
The process is starting, it lines up with the LTP, so that's where the funding comes from. In addition
Okay, so for those who didn't hear it, there is a service agreement with the Citizens Advice Bureau every 3 years, and it will be looked at again as part of the LTP, which we are doing this year, plus applications to our other funding branches, grants opportunities.
Yes,
Thank you.
and choice. Yeah, towards the rent. Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? Okay, well, there are none. Thank you very much. It was very informative.
Thank you all.
Thanks for the work you do.
Thank you, Susan.
So our second two speakers, Aidan Clark and Rawinia Lewis, would you like to come up and sit at the table? Just by means of introduction, Aidan and Rawinia are here as part of K3, which is the Kahungunu property, part of the asset holding company, Kahungunu Asset Holding Company. K3, from what I understand, I'm sure you'll probably get a better explanation from the people involved, but venture based on the growing people, building homes and growing Māori ownership. Aidan's a former Magpies rugby player, CE of Pacific Rugby Players. Well, I looked it up on Wikipedia.
Don't forget that part.
Māori Pacific Trades training course involved there at EIT. Rawinia Lewis is working alongside Aidan as business manager for the Kahungunu Asset Holding Company. I hope I got all that right, but over to you. Thank you for coming.
Kia ora, thanks Maxine, and kia ora koutou, ngā mihi nui kia koutou. Ko Rawinia Lewis toko ingoa, and as Maxine referred, I manage the Kahungunu Asset Holding Company, and that's a commercial arm of the iwi. So we hold a number of portfolio across mostly farming, fishing, forestry, and we've since in September last year established K3 Kahungunu Property as one of our companies. And we're working alongside Aidan for the last year to stand that up, and we'll talk a little bit about what that is over the next few minutes.
Morena koutou. Yes, likewise, it's a pleasure to be here actually to tell you the story of what we've been working on over the last 12 months and have a little bit of insight about what the future will look like through Kahungunu Property, which is very new. All right.
So we've got a short presentation that we'll just flick through, and then opportunity for any questions. So as I referred to, there's the iwi at the top. So the iwi own the asset holding company, and the asset holding company settled the fisheries assets about 16, 17 years ago, and from that we've grown the portfolio of assets, and K3 is the newest kid on the block as our property development company, and that was as a result of our the chair of the iwi, Ngāhi Iwi, wanting to take a more proactive response to the housing crisis that affects so many Māori across Kahungunu. Prior to this, it was more of a sort of facilitative approach, advocative approach, and now we want to be getting in there, building the houses and supporting whānau. So we've established K3 for that purpose. And this is the why, and you will all know this, and we've talked about how Māori are impacted in the housing sector in terms of not only homelessness but also housing affordability, the Māori unemployment rate, and as we talk about K3 we'll refer to how we are addressing a number of aspects of whānau standards of living, and also the impact of COVID-19 has been disproportionate for Māori. And so it's for these reasons that we were leading us to where we are today and our future. So this is K3, so it's not an entirely imaginative name, but it is stuck. And there are three purposes to K3, and those are up on the board there. Growing people through trades training, so that's one big part of it. Building homes, of course. And then thirdly is supporting and growing Māori trades, businesses and ownership across Kahungunu.
Kia ora, yeah, just to dive a little bit more into those PO and provide some more detail for you all. It's essential that the PO around building homes and the commercial objectives of K3 is successful, so that we can achieve the other two social outcomes around growing Māori skills and Māori businesses. As you can see there, we hope to be a developer of difference, where we are partnering where we need to with the likes of Napier City Council, and I must say that actually our partnership has been fantastic so far with Richard and the team, Natasha, Georgina, and been very helpful on a number of the initiatives that we've been working on, and really also really pushing the envelope from an iwi perspective, so that we're able to provide warm, healthy homes that all of us would like to reside in. This is just to give you a bit of an idea of the pipeline. So we're very much small steps to start off with. 2 builds about to commence in Venables Ave in Maraenui, which is in partnership with Kāinga Ora. Just around the corner from that, we have another 6 homes that we're working on detailed designs for at the moment in Kelvin Road. And then we've agreed in first part anyway with Kāinga Ora to deliver 40 homes which are all located within Maraenui, which is, as you can see on the presentation, we go to 6, 15, 17. This has been a very good learning process actually, in terms of working with Kāinga Ora, best way to say it. But it's evolving, and like I said, Napier City Council staff have been very helpful in all of those interactions. From there, for us to achieve and to really make a difference, the focus is on scale, and I'm ensuring that we have a pipeline so that we can activate K3 to have more than just an impact of building homes, but also in those social outcomes, like I said. So the 40 plus that's on the presentation is referring to another land deal that we're doing, and then the next one is with Hapu, which could be 80 plus homes, and then at the moment which will be coming online in the next year or two is with a private developer of 200 plus homes in Ahuriri. So what this provides us is that scale to actually really, like I said, make a difference. I think it's pertinent to let you know we have a huge desire to explore prefabrication. There's a number of reasons for this. For us to actually be able to kick a dent into the affordable home requirements across here, we believe that we need to use different building methods, different materials to what we're currently using. And also importantly, what prefabrication indoors provides is an opportunity for unskilled labour to enter into the industry. So at the moment, to give you a practical example, with our current builds with concrete pads and timber frames, ratios are usually 2 to 3 qualified builders, which are hard to find these days, for every opportunity for a new person or apprentice to be involved. By putting that into a controlled environment, you can basically flip that ratio over, and you could provide 4 or 5 unskilled workers jobs who are overseen by a qualified person through a controlled environment. That, let alone weather mitigation, economies of scale, and all these sorts of things. So whilst we are embarking on our traditional builds for those first 2, 6, 17 that I showed you, in parallel with that, we're working hard on what this prefabrication facility could look like here in Kahungunu, providing jobs for Kahungunu and homes for Kahungunu. It's not an easy one. We could build them traditionally down here. We often talk about what the spectrum looks like. At this end, we could 3D print the whole lot, but that's not going to achieve a lot of the outcomes that are important to us. So it's important that we find the sweet spot in between the balance of technology, the balance of being realistic, and also the opportunity for jobs. A little bit about our other PO around growing Māori businesses. This has been fantastic in early stages. What this involves is really identifying those who have aspirations to go down their own trades businesses and helping them in 2 ways. And this involves firstly just that original hump of how do I set up a company, how do I set up my website and my business cards and my logo. And for us, this is not just around those practical things, but it's about building mana. We want these small Māori businesses to be able to stand tall and to be proud of what they're doing and to be able to compete with every other business in the industry. So we provide each business, we're able to get some funding from MB around this with a package around that branding, and then secondly, we'll be able to provide them a pipeline of work through that scale that I just showed you before, which is the second thing everybody is nervous about when you go out on your own, is am I going to be able to sustain this? So in 2 ways we hope there we can do that, and also we're identifying other parts relating to building their capability strategy so that these businesses are sustainable for years and years to come. And growing Māori skills, our other PO. We, again, with MB, we received $2 million of funding to take control a little bit more of 50 Māori apprenticeships. This allows us, you'll see up there, that again, to improve the ratios. The ITOs at the moment that are out there responsible for the academic journey of apprentices are really tapped out because of the demand, which is great. But we're talking, you know, one training advisor looking after 150 to 200 apprentices, which is tough to give them the support that they need. So what our model is based around at K3 is around, we have a trade training manager in place, and we'll have another person in pastoral care below that, which gives us a 25-to-1 ratio, which means extra support and making sure that they can get through that journey as best as they can. And the other key part is we're holding strong on that the living wage is applied for all K3 apprentices. It's been an interesting one early for the sort of 5 to 10 that we've been applying at the moment, is really working with employers about why we're holding strong on that. We want this whole opportunity to be uplifting for Māori. We want people who hear about the dream and trades and what can be achieved if you're a qualified electrician or plumber to be able to realise that. But when you've got 2 or 3 kids to feed and you want to pay rent, that spending 3 years on $19 an hour is not achievable, right? So at the very least, we think the living wage is a starting point. So we're really proud of that, and we know that it's actually going to make a difference. And already we're seeing that on job sites, starting to, if you can think about the awkwardness of having a K3 apprentice on a living wage and the others not, already it's been a change agent for bringing other wages up, which is exactly what we had hoped for. And over and above that, our K3 Māori apprentices will be receiving extra workshops around life skills, around managing their lives outside of work, and obviously we will be naturally wrapping around a strong sort of tikanga and reo environment around them, who they're all thirsty for it as well. So what does success look like? It looks like this: happy apprentices, qualified apprentices, and more of them, and them being successful and taking opportunity of the next 10, 20 years of opportunity that sits out there in trades. It looks like this: young men who have gone out on their own and taken the plunge and are scared, but we can help them get over the hump and become successful businesses in the long term, doing work not only for K3 but for all other developments across all of Kahungunu. And it looks like this: happy whānau in warm and healthy homes. Yeah, despite, you know, the tendency to focus on the social outcomes, right at the core of this, we need to build homes, and we need to build them fast. And having people along this journey with us who are willing to partner and help us get there, so we can identify opportunities with land, so we can achieve economies of scale to make homes more affordable, and then also play our role in terms of how do we get whānau into home ownership, shared equity models and all those sorts of things, which will be happening a little bit further down the track, is a responsibility of not only everybody in this room, but especially us as iwi. We've got a lot of skin in the game here, and we realise that. And that's us.
Yep.
Any questions?
Yes, Councillor Simpson.
Thank you for your presentation. I hope we get a copy of that.
Yeah.
But my questions are around the home ownership model. Are you looking at retaining some as rentals, or are you looking at on selling them? And your model around that, is it rent to own, or what's your modelling, and how are you encouraging the home ownership shift?
Yeah, so K3 itself is not setting up to be a landlord of any type. So we want an exit strategy in terms of the developments, and the exit strategy starts with kāinga ora, for example. It might be to other chips that are that operate across Kahungunu. But yes, we are looking at home ownership. We see that as a game changer for whānau to be able to own their own home. There are a number of iwi across the country who have different shared equity schemes, and of course there's the work that the Tai Whenua in Hiratonga is doing for their waingako, getting people prepared and ready. So our view on that is that we really need to do some, looking around at what's working successfully elsewhere and how we can borrow some of that and implement here in Kahungunu.
And just to add to that, I think it's such an important part of this whole sort of spectrum is, so we have to be fairly courageous on what sort of models we try and have a go at here. Rawini and I often talk about, the big barrier of land and land cost, and what models that we can create that are going to alleviate some of those issues. So like we said, K3 itself doesn't have any aspirations to be that person, but we could be the conduit to setting up different mechanisms to achieve it.
Any other questions or comments?
Mix.
Oh, sorry, Deputy Mayor Brosnan.
Thank you. Yeah, fantastic presentation, and thank you. I think all of the social outcomes and the housing outcomes you're talking about are fantastic. One of you, I think it may have been you, Aidan, early on mentioned commercial objectives as well, but that wasn't part of the presentation. I'm just wondering if you could sort of let us know what those are, if those are open.
Yeah, like I was sort of referring there that for us to achieve those social outcomes, that just building homes part of K3 needs to be commercially successful. Effectively, as you saw in the model and what Rawini was talking about, K3 being a developer of difference means that all of our profits and proceeds go back into the iwi at the top. All right, so that's but how that's distributed it could look very different. But what's important to us is that whether we're doing affordable homes, whether we're building in a higher end market, whether it may be commercial builds in years to come, is that we have to be successful in making sure that we're to achieve that. Otherwise, we won't be sustainable either.
So we've got some already very effective and great social services across the rohe, and so we're not wanting to be in that social service space. We see this as a commercial venture. It sits under the asset holding company, but that we're wanting to add those bolt-ons and get more than just commercial outcomes.
Awesome, thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
I've got a question, if I can, please, Madam Chair.
Sure.
Very dark. He looks like he's being made anonymous.
Go ahead, Councillor Tapine.
Thank you. My question is around the considered focus. Ngā mihi kōrua, have heard your presentation a couple of times, and it's great to see Nikki playing an active role in providing solutions. So my question is around Nikki's, or K3 rather, K3's focus on fabrication. There's a perception historically around some of the challenges that fabricated units provide, particularly around living standards, the intensification of people in areas and the social problems that sort of come with that. But mostly I'm wondering, could you address for me, if you guys have a focus on a prefabricated approach to the demand, what is your current perception at central government around building prefabricated units en masse for this market? Are there any challenges coming in that sector from central government around a focus on fabricated units?
To attempt to answer that, I think there's possibly two parts to that. One is around the typology and the type of housing, and the other is around the actual method of doing it, which is prefabricated. But yeah, to hopefully answer your first question, it's extremely important to us that we are creating homes that are desirable to live in for whānau, that I want to live in. And this can be achieved. It's not that hard just to put the extra love into the 1%ers around claddings and roof pitches and changing. We don't want to build Coronation Street, and we also don't want to be dropping boxes into backyards, so that won't be happening, not on part of K3 kaupapa anyway. So that's the responsibility of us to, and we are embarking on spending a lot of resource and time to find exactly what those homes will look like that can be achieved in a prefabricated environment. The prefabrication discussion is one that's not easy. As you know, just as well as me, there's many models across the world where people are doing it well and also not so well. And there's a difference between proper prefabrication and just building a house inside. Right? So, for us to achieve some of the outcomes we want, it means specialised skills in certain environments, and it's quite complex. But I think, I'm not sure if I'm answering your question or not, but we want to do it properly, so we're doing a lot of work. We probably haven't got the exact answer for you right now, but we will. And that may be in 6 months' time, it may be in 12 months' time. But like I said, in the meantime, we'll continue to start building now because people need homes now. And then we'll be able to return back to you and give you a solid answer on what those homes might look like.
Cool. I've got one follow-up supplementary question, if I can, Madam Chair. After the Christchurch earthquake, there was a massive building push to send qualified people down to the South Island to help with that rebuild. And we discovered that when we sent a large portion of those of our qualified or interested builders down into that sector, they were sent back because some of them held convictions and couldn't work on residential sites. So I'm looking, because there's a good focus at activating a broader population of our community, is this something that K3 is aware of, and have they structured that into their training and delivery?
Yes. We're aware that and we're learning very quickly that people that want to be part of the K3 kaupapa don't come to the start line with the same skills and the same sort of backgrounds. So what we're trying to do is develop, to be able to assess the criteria and the readiness, I guess, and then also not to be able to say no, but also to provide opportunity for people to grow the skills that they need to be able to get onto site, or to ensure that they're in a life position to be able to do that as well. I think it's very important. There's going to be some that are ready to go, that are already in work, that are just on the brink of an apprenticeship, and there's going to be some that are looking for the next life opportunity, that have come from a background that hasn't been conducive to them to be winning and to be in a positive environment. And we want to make sure, whether it's K3 or whether it's one of our associated services, that we're wrapping that around them so that they're successful as well. There has to be a pathway for everybody. The funnel into this K3 kaupapa is quite broad. And they're already starting to become from different directions, but we want to make sure that we are, accounting for all.
Ngā mihi kōrua, thank you very much.
Kia ora.
No further questions from me, Madam Chair.
Yeah, Councillor Brown.
Kia ora. I was just interested, when you are further down the track and you're looking at your 100 or 200 plus homes, whether you're looking at bringing in some elements of like the Papakainga type model, or a community building type development, or whether it was just a standard development that we see normally.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I think all options on the table. We are looking at, traditional single level homes with a backyard. We need to look at 2-story options and walk-ups, and we are looking at concepts Papakainga, but also marae kainga, where we're starting to explore what a shared environment could look like with communal ablution and cooking areas. Very much a return to how we lived 200 years ago as Māori, in a communal sort of space, because quite possibly, as you all know here, the bathroom and the kitchen is the most expensive part of a home. So if we can actually do something innovative in that space to consolidate that, but still provide warm, healthy living areas for whānau, then we will explore it. But again, we've got a little bit work to do before we land on exactly what that looks like, but also conscious that actually sometimes you just have to do things and go for it, right? We're not going to probably get it right all 100% of the time, but we will be at least doing something.
Yeah, and I think too, and Councillor Tapani alluded to, in terms of intensification, and to be able to provide something affordable, it's around how you can maximise the use of that land. And so, and I'm sure you've had many of these discussions, as the traditional front door, backyard, 600 square metre section, that's the cost of that is prohibitive to most people. So exploring some of those other options, Papakainga type options, is where we can see making an impact into that affordability area.
Cool. Any other questions? Thank you very much for your presentation. I know I heard you speak at the National Māori Housing Conference a few weeks ago. It was very encouraging. And of course, Hastings, with their place-based project, which has been very successful, I think the key to the success of that, and will be the key to the success for us too in facing our housing challenges, is working in partnership. Hastings has done that successfully with the Tai Whenua, with MB, with yourselves, with TPK, with Kāinga Ora, and I'm really pleased to see, to have you come along here and begin that journey with us too, because we're all trying to achieve the same ends, and we want to support you as much as possible in doing so. So thank you very much for your time and your presentation.
Kia ora, thanks Maxine.
Kia ora. Thank you. Thank you.
Right. Moving on, the next item on the agenda is announcements by the Mayor. Were there any, do you know, Deputy Mayor, did she ask you to take that. Just had to leave, unfortunately, as she indicated.
No, she hadn't, but I just thought I might take the opportunity to draw anyone's attention who may be watching that we do have a public meeting coming up next Monday evening, the 22nd, at the War Memorial Centre to unveil the concept drawings that we have for the return of the War Memorial elements to the building and the site, and I encourage anyone who's interested in that to seek some further information and come along. We have that available on our website, and I understand it's also going to be in some of our community papers that are coming up this week. We're also planning to live stream the meeting on our Facebook page, so just a shout out for that.
What time would that be?
5:30 start.
5:30, excellent, thank you very much. Right, moving on, there's no announcements by the chairperson. Are there any minor matters not on the agenda that anybody would like to bring up? No, okay. So, announcements by the management. Moving on, confirmation of the minutes, that the minutes of the Napier People and Places Committee held on Thursday the 4th of February 2021 be taken as a true and accurate record of the meeting. May I have a mover and a seconder for that? Councillor Wright moving, Councillor McGrath second. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
All those against say no. Right, that's carried. Our one agenda item, public agenda item, is the amendments to the 2021 Council Committee meeting schedule. And Ms Barbia, if you could actually explain this to us, please. Thank you.
Kia ora, kia katoa. This report is one that you will be seeing coming through on a regular basis from governance. It's simply to update the meeting schedule when we know far enough out to plan it that we can do that without needing to call an emergency or an extraordinary meeting. So this is standard sort of process, and you'll be seeing me here from time to time with the updates. In this year, with the LTP consultation being planned, there's quite a few changes because we're trying to smooth the workflow coming through so that everyone involved has time to consider, for example, the submissions coming in. So we've pushed back the council and Māori committee meetings to provide a bit more space to councillors before the hearings so that you can consult and consider those submissions. And since the publication of the agenda, there has actually been two minor changes which were circulated to you. So we've been asked to include a hearings meeting because there are two tenders due to be finalised in June. And Audit New Zealand has asked us to push back the adoption meeting by one day, so we've revised the dates, and so what you will see in the new resolution, we've added those two additional dates. And that's that.
Right, are there any questions? I just wondered, just a clarification, I understand if meetings are held at sort of short notice, they're extraordinary meetings. Is that just extraordinary council, or do you have extraordinary standing committees as well?
Yes.
A bit of an explanation.
Yes. The reason an extraordinary meeting is held is that we are not able to provide notice to the public far enough ahead so that they can be aware of the meeting. We don't have time to publish the agenda. So yes, any of the committees may also be an extraordinary meeting. Generally, it's in very specific circumstances.
Right, Councillor Simpson.
Yeah, I'd just like to convey my thanks to the staff for their efforts in forecasting our time commitments, because it's very helpful for those of us that have external employment concerns. So it's much healthier for us to have a forecast of our commitments. So it's great. Thank you very much. And I like the way that you're regularly updating our electronic diaries too. Thank you.
Great. Any other comments? Right, hearing no further discussion, would somebody like to move the officer's recommendation that the Napier People and Places Committee receive the report amendment to the 2020 Council Committee meeting schedule, adopt the amendments to the 2021 meeting schedule as below, and I assume this, including the amended,
which it's the addition of the 22nd of June for the hearings.
Right, so there are two amendments which you should be aware of. So these are included in the officer's resolution. So is there a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Deputy Mayor Brosnan and Councillor Crystal. Any discussion? All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
All those against say no. It's carried. Now, because of time constraints, this is a decision of council in order to fit these in before our next council meeting. So could I please have a mover and a seconder for a decision of council? Councillor Simpson, Councillor Brown. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
All those against say no. Thank you very much. We'll adjourn this meeting and delay our public excluded section until after the Napier Prosperous Napier meeting. Thank you.